and welcome back to the United Stand. I am joined by transfer expert and journalist Ben Jacobs for the B&B show. Thank you for your patience. We are live and we are getting into all the latest Manchester United news and transfer news. Ben, I've been waiting for this all week. I couldn't wait to speak to you. First of all, I want to start off with Manu Koné. A lot of rumours about him being the priority for the third midfielder. What is the current update on him, and could we see a bid go in from Manchester United?
Yeah, it's possible, especially now the World Cup has finished. So Manu Koné has had an inquiry from Manchester United on the player side. No formal talks yet with Roma. Some of the numbers flying around, I think I've seen reports, for example, in Italy of 35, 40 million euros. They're on the low side, according to sources. So this is not necessarily the bargain deal that people are billing it as, but the profile is appreciated. Christopher Vivell has been involved in some early stage talks as well. And there's no doubt that he's on the list. But so, for example, is Camavinga. If the door is open to a departure, player at the moment wants to stay at Real Madrid. It's well known that Alex Scott is a target as well. I revealed only 48 hours ago that Chelsea have had a bid rejected for 64 million. So that informs both Bournemouth's position of not for sale, but also the kind of valuation if they are to change their mind. It's obviously got to be above that number, and significantly so. And then it's fair to say that Tyler Adams is one of several names on the list. This was a story that we broke on TalkSport in December last year. He's still there. I kind of want to stop there. Like, we can go into Tchouaméni a little bit later. It was Adams, not Scott, for example, even though we're speaking about two specific targets from a list of several. Would that be seen as quite underwhelming amongst the fan base? Because if they go in for Scott and walk away with Adams, I'm not so sure that many Manchester United fans would be happy, even though I think he's a fantastic player.
Yeah, I think he would be seen as quite underwhelming, Ben. I'm going to be pretty honest. I think he is a good player, by the way. I think he's a really good player. But I think it's one of them where the injuries are a concern for Manchester United. And also, I don't think you get in the player at the right point in his career where you should have bought him. Whereas with Alex Scott, you're really getting him at the right point in his career where, you know, he can go and kick on. He's at that perfect age to bring into the football club. Yes, he's going to be a high price point, but he's got the world at his feet and he's ready to go, and he can do that at Manchester United. I like Adams. I think he's a good player. But when you've already got Andre Santos and Yuri Tillemans, I don't think it raises the bar massively high. If you know what I mean, you're an outside. When I say an outsider, Ben, you're not a United fan, but you know, you report on the club and you definitely know your football. Would you see that as underwhelming as an outsider looking into Manchester United?
As you say, there's the injury aspect, but he can break between the lines. He's a progressive passer. He's a ball winner. And maybe as importantly, if you don't just look at the football side, he's a top character. So I spent the summer with Tyler Adams, speaking to him regularly as part of the World Cup squad under Maurizio Pochettino. And you can see that he's just got this calmness on and off the field. He's very intelligent. He's a very direct player. He can win the ball back. And I suppose a lot will just depend on how Manchester United see the chemistry here. Because remember, the expectation is that of the two deeper midfield spots, one is Kobbie Mainoo starting every week or in the big games anyway. And then it's a case of finding another. And you would think that Yuri Tillemans, at least according to my information, is going to be a starting midfielder. Now, if it transpires that a marquee name, if we want to call it that, although clubs would argue every signing has the potential to be marquee, but if a kind of universally either expensive or globally impressive CV arrives, so then we're talking about players, I would say, in that bracket of Anderson, who they didn't get, or somebody like Tchouaméni, who we can discuss in a moment, then obviously they become a starter as well. And one of the two that I've mentioned would have to go out of the side. But for me, if Tielemans is a starter and Kobbie Mainoo is playing, then the chemistry that a player like Adams would bring in terms of his skill set and the depth as well could be very valuable. Now, those close to the player side tell me with Adams that their belief is in and around £35 million might be good enough to start a conversation. That's not quite my understanding, putting scrutiny on that information. Bournemouth in this inflated market would not be as easy as people might think to deal with if it was Adams as opposed to Scott. And I sense that this is more a 50, even £60 million deal. But as I say, the player might agitate for a move away, albeit still remaining professional, if offers in excess of 35 million were tabled. So let's see whether anything develops, because Manchester United sources on Adams are not really billing him as a leading target at this stage. They're just confirming, when I've made inquiries, that Adams is one of several names on the list. And there's a little bit more substance around the Koné side. But again, to stress, the inquiry was on the player side, and Roma, as of now, are still waiting for any kind of formal offers.
Yeah, I think with Adams as well, he's 5'9", if I'm not mistaken. I know Scott isn't much taller, but the physical presence, I think, is massively needed in Manchester United's midfield. And then you can talk about targets such as Koné and such as Belieber, which we're going to talk about as well a little bit. So, and also I think there's a reason why there's Chelsea and Man City, you know, other clubs like interested in Alex Scott. And as good as Tyler Adams could be, I think there is a limit there. So let's see. I think there's a reason why he's a little bit further down the pecking order, but let's see if Manchester United
by the way,
resorts
it's just
to
worth
that.
noting as well that Arsenal, of course, made an inquiry, but they're focused on Bruno Guimaraes at the moment, as I reported last week. The expectation is that a bid goes in finally directly to Newcastle United. Manchester United had held talks with Guimaraes' agent before the window even opened. Nothing has developed so far. And then you have Man City, like you say, but with Alex Scott, they've decided at the moment to prioritise Ayoub Bouadi, who had a fantastic World Cup with Morocco. 100 million euros appears to be the asking price if clubs want him now. And City are moving with a view to try and get him immediately. So the kind of backhanded good news for Manchester United, even though fans will see it as bad news, is if City get Bouadi, then their midfield is done in likelihood, even if Rodri departs, because Anderson's already arrived. Tottenham, who like Scott, have already had 2 midfielders come in. So very unlikely that they decide to go for Scott now, given what they've spent in their midfield. And obviously Chelsea bid for Scott, so can't be discounted. And when I kind of go good news, bad news, what I mean is, if I was a Man United fan, I wouldn't be saying, great, other clubs have sorted their midfield, so now we've got a clearer path at other names. I'd be saying, why didn't we get X, Y, and Z? Because every fan doesn't really care about the finances, the chemistry, the circumstances. They just care about the fact that Anderson was United's top target. They didn't get him. Man United were in for Mateus Fernandes. They didn't get him. But in a backhanded way, it may help with other sagas now, because there could be clearer runs at certain players as other clubs who have been more decisive have settled their midfield. But it's obviously not good news, in the sense many of these targets that have gone elsewhere were also on Manchester United's radar too.